Welcome to AI Historical Revival. Today we witness the fall of Jerusalem, a tragedy that reshaped the ancient Middle East forever. Jerusalem stood as an impregnable fortress, its massive stone walls reaching towards the heavens, defying any army that dared to approach. For centuries, these fortifications protected the people of Judah, but they were about to face a military machine unlike any other. Nebuchadnezzar II, the ambitious king of Babylon, sought to expand his empire and crush any kingdom that refused to bow down. His army was a disciplined force of destruction, moving with precision and carrying the most advanced siege technology of the ancient world. Jerusalem was not just a religious center, it was a strategic gateway controlling the vital trade routes between Babylon and Egypt. To breach these walls, Babylon employed terrifying engineering, including heavy catapults capable of hurling massive stones to crush defenses and morale. They constructed siege towers rising 30 meters high, allowing their archers to rain death upon the defenders from a superior vantage point. Controlling Jerusalem meant Nebuchadnezzar could effectively block Egyptian influence, securing his empire's western flank against his only true rival. Caught between these two superpowers, the kings of Judah faced an impossible choice: submit to the rising dragon or the fading lion. The tragedy unfolded in three distinct stages, beginning in 605 BC, with a calculated psychological attack on the city. Nebuchadnezzar did not destroy the city immediately. Instead, he took the best and brightest minds, including the young prophet Daniel. By removing the future leaders and intellectuals, Babylon aimed to cripple Judah's ability to revolt without shedding a drop of blood. For a time, Jerusalem survived as a vassal state, paying heavy tribute to Babylon, while resentment and rebellion brewed silently within. But loyalty was short-lived. In 597 BC, a rebellion triggered the second, more severe phase of Babylonian punishment. King Jehoiakim surrendered to save the city, but Nebuchadnezzar's mercy came at a terrible price for the kingdom's culture and economy. They looted the sacred temple, stripping it of its treasures, and carried off thousands of craftsmen, blacksmiths, and warriors to Babylon. This was a strategic decapitation of society, leaving behind only the poorest citizens and those deemed incapable of leading a resistance. Nebuchadnezzar installed Zedekiah as a puppet king, making him swear a sacred oath by God to remain loyal to the Babylonian Empire. However, Zedekiah was a weak ruler, easily manipulated by his court, who foolishly believed that Egypt would come to their rescue. The prophet Jeremiah warned the king repeatedly that rebellion would bring total destruction, but his words fell on deaf and stubborn ears. Driven by false hope, Zedekiah rebelled, stopping the tribute payments. This act sealed the tragic fate of Jerusalem and its people. Enraged by this betrayal, Nebuchadnezzar returned not to punish, but to obliterate. He marched his massive army for the final siege. They built a siege wall around Jerusalem, cutting off all food and supplies. The city was now a trap, slowly suffocating. For 18 long months, the siege continued. Inside the walls, the situation turned from anxiety to desperation, and finally, to absolute horror. Famine became the true enemy. The bread vanished from the marketplace, and the people began to waste away in the streets. The Book of Lamentations describes the gruesome reality, where the skin of the wealthy shriveled black like an oven from hunger. Hunger drove the citizens to madness. Historical records recount the unspeakable horror of cannibalism as mothers turned on their own children to survive. The defenders were so weakened by starvation that they could barely lift their weapons to repel the constant attacks on the walls. Outside, the relentless pounding of battering rams echoed day and night, cracking the stone defences that had stood for centuries. Finally, in the summer heat of 586 BC, the walls were breached. The Babylonian tide flooded into the starving city. There was no mercy. The starving defenders were slaughtered where they stood, and the streets of Jerusalem ran red with blood. Under the cover of darkness, King Zedekiah and his remaining soldiers slipped out of the city, fleeing towards the Jordan River. But there was no escape. The Babylonian cavalry pursued them relentlessly, overtaking the fleeing king in the plains near Jericho. Zedekiah's army scattered, abandoning him. He was captured and dragged in chains to Riblah to face the judgment of Nebuchadnezzar. The judgment was brutal. Nebuchadnezzar forced Zedekiah to witness the consequence of his betrayal in the most horrific way possible. His sons were slain before his eyes. It was a calculated cruelty, ensuring he saw the end of his royal line. Then, in a final act of barbarity, Zedekiah was blinded. The death of his children was the last thing he ever saw. Bound in bronze fetters, the blind king was hauled away to Babylon, leaving behind a city that was about to be erased. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, ordered the systematic destruction of Jerusalem. The magnificent temple of Solomon was set ablaze. The holy sanctuary, the center of their faith and identity, burned to the ground. The fire raged, consuming centuries of history. Every great house was burned. The royal palace, the administrative centers, and the homes of the wealthy were reduced to ash. To ensure Jerusalem could never rise again, the Babylonian army systematically dismantled the city walls, leaving it defenseless and broken. Jerusalem was left a desolate ruin. The once great city was now a heap of rubble, haunted by the memories of the dead. The survivors were rounded up and marched into exile. They left their homeland, carrying nothing but their grief and their faith. This marked the end of the kingdom of Judah. The land lay desolate, enjoying its Sabbaths while its people wept in captivity. By the rivers of Babylon, they sat and wept when they remembered Zion, wondering if they would ever see their home again. Yet, in this darkness, their identity was forged anew. Without a temple, they turned to the written word to preserve their heritage. Decades later, Babylon itself would fall. The Persians would rise, and a remnant would return to rebuild what was destroyed. But the scars of Nebuchadnezzar's siege remain forever etched in history, a reminder of the fragility of power and human pride. The destruction of Jerusalem is not just a story of war. It is a testament to the enduring spirit of a people. Archaeologists today still find the arrowheads and burnt layers from 586 BC, physical evidence of the fire that consumed the city. The prophet's lamentations still echo through the ages, mourning the lonely city that was once full of people and glory. We remember the beauty that was lost, the architectural marvel of the ancient world that vanished in a single week of fire. Even the mighty Nebuchadnezzar is gone, his empire dust. But the story of Jerusalem continues to be told across the world. History teaches us that walls can fall and temples can burn, but the culture and memory of a nation can survive. As the sun sets on this tragic chapter, we reflect on the suffering of those who lived and died within these walls. From the ashes of destruction, lessons emerge about leadership, faith, and the terrible cost of war on the innocent population. The siege of Jerusalem remains one of the most significant events in biblical history, shaping the future of three major religions. Every stone in Jerusalem has a story to tell, and the scorched stones of the Babylonian destruction speak the loudest of all. Babylon's power seemed absolute, Yet it was this very conquest that sowed the seeds of its eventual cultural transformation. Military might is fleeting. The chariots and siege towers are gone, but the written words of the captives have endured for millennia. Today, we walk where they walked, trying to understand the magnitude of the catastrophe that befell this city so long ago. We must never forget the human cost, the starvation, the fear and the desperation that ordinary families faced during those 18 months. They were marched through the Ishtar Gate, entering a world of wonder and idolatry, far from the simple hills of Judah. Through stories passed down from generation to generation, the memory of the destruction was kept alive, preventing it from fading away. Both the Babylonian chronicles and the biblical texts confirm the details of this brutal campaign, validating the history we explore. The stars that look down upon the burning city are the same stars that watch over us tonight, silent witnesses to history. Time moves on, but the lessons of the past remain relevant. Pride, betrayal, and war continue to shape our world today. Just as a sprout grows from a stump, life eventually returned to Jerusalem, proving that destruction is not always the end. We honor the memory of the fallen by telling their story accurately, reviving the history that was buried under layers of ash. Jerusalem stands today as a survivor, a city that has risen from its own destruction time and time again throughout history. The conquerors are gone, but the spirit of the conquered survived to tell the tale. This is the irony of history. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the past. Understanding these events helps us appreciate the resilience of humanity. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, please subscribe to AI Historical Revival for more stories from the ancient world.